people always ask me, well, what's the secret sauce at Penn State? And I say, you're not going to like my answer. And so I can lead more by shutting my mouth. And so I was no longer the funny guy in the room.
That's part of why I'm not fighting currently, is I don't feel the need to prove anything anymore.
Brotherhood for me is a safe space emotionally where I can serve more powerfully.
How can you tell when people are worthy of trust?
BETR already has the craziest multipliers in the industry, and we're taking it up a level. We're taking it up. It's going to be insane. 1,000x multipliers. You heard me right. 1,000x. All you got to do is add 4 boosts to your lineup. Not even that many. 4 boosts to your lineup, and get ready to win big. BETR has the UFC, so you can already lock me in there as a boost. We got the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, the MLB. They're all live in the app. Go download BETR. Use code BO. 1,000x. Win you some money.
Welcome back to Nickals and Dimes. Today, we are joined by a man who could have arguably been the fittest man on the planet at one point. At age 22, he was a Navy SEAL, and after his services, wanted to pursue his dreams by qualifying for the Olympics in track and field. However, though he looked like he was in top physical shape, his mind was elsewhere. This led to his studies at Yosan University, where he learned traditional Chinese medicine and Western pathology. He has spent the last decade studying the universal Tao system, and today he helps several athletes, celebrities, and entrepreneurs on their path to success. Please welcome to the show, author of Free for Life, Christopher Lee Maher. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm amongst my brotherhood, so this is always awesome.
Yes, sir.
You know, when you're sitting with men who are God-focused, right? Mission-focused, and know what they love, and they pour all their heart and passion into it. I mean, this is a good day. That's why I love coming up here to Penn State, up to State College. I get to be around people who move through the world the way that I do. Eat right, sleep right, do everything they can to make everyone around them better. What could be more important? What could be a better sitting? I'm happy to have a seat at the table today.
Yeah, well, we're super grateful to have you here. Let's talk about how you got introduced to Penn State wrestling and to us, because I think that's an interesting story. Probably a good place to start.
Yeah, to me, it's a funny story. So I was watching the Big Ten championships, and this was, I think, 2019. And there were 6 lower leg injuries. And I was watching the TV, and I thought, man, there's no way these guys are going to win the NCAAs. And I told my lady, I said, Cass, I need to get a hold of this coach. And she was like, he's the best wrestler of all time. There's no way he's going to talk to you. And I thought, did she just say, like, this is impossible? So that, fired me up inside. And I tuned into that SEAL team energy, and I was like, I'm going to make this happen. So we're driving to Walmart to pick up some dog food and some food for the house, and driving on the way back, and I get into it again with her, and she's like, look, I just don't think you should waste your time. Like, that's a really amazing program. I was like, is she saying I'm not as amazing as them? Like, does she not know who's sitting beside her? And so that night I drove back to LA for work. And as soon as I got back there, I just started hunting around the internet how to get in touch with him. And I landed at a website called NLWC. And it said something like, if you have a complaint about the website. And I thought, okay. So I sent a text. My name's Christopher Lee Maher. I'm a former U.S. Navy SEAL. I can reduce your injury rate by 35% the first year and by 45% the next year. And I can get your guys ready for the NCAAs, no problem. Here's my number. And I wake up in the morning. As soon as I open my phone, ding, let's talk.
Wow.
And I said, okay, we got on the horn. We talked for about an hour and a half, and I was here, I think, 2 days later.
Wow.
I got all the guys prepped, ready to go, and then COVID hit.
Right.
Yeah, and that was a bummer for multiple reasons. Whatever side of the ledger you sit on, that was difficult. And then the relationship started because, he sat in initially and he could see I had a really good relationship with all the guys, and I got to see how Penn State rolls, cracking on each other all day long, video games when they're not wrestling. So basically they eat, sleep, train, and play video games. And they go to class. When
they have extra time, they
have extra time away from gaming. Then I'm like, oh, he games too. This is so it was a good vibe.
Nice.
Interesting.
Cool. So what was kind of your assessment like coming into the program? All the different, there's obviously the coaches, the athletes, everybody else on staff, the dynamic. What was to you kind of some things that you found interesting, or maybe some things that set the Penn State program apart from other, people you had seen or groups, organizations you'd seen?
I think the thing that hit me right away is that they had the same value system. For me, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't do pharmaceuticals, I don't do recreationals, I don't eat sugar. And I was looking at the coaching staff, because as the coaches go, the athletes go. And, these guys, they're God first. They eat right. They're not doing drugs. They're not doing alcohol. And I could see the amount of service they were giving the kids. And I thought, wow, these guys, they really care. And how do you say it? There's just a vibe. You know what I mean? Like when you're around people who have goals, have dreams, and you're in a room where everyone's competing for that top spot, and the guy that's, in the third place, he's happy to be here, even though he knows he could go somewhere else and start. He wants to be in this vibe, that says something to you. And that spoke to me.
Interesting.
That really spoke to me. And I think the other thing is Kale's dry humor, really spoke to me. Like, he was lighthearted. He was always there when I was working with the guys in the beginning, and I could see the relationship that he had with them. And I judge people. I don't judge them, right? But
Assess.
I assess people. I pay attention to how they treat younger people. And he was always treating everyone the same, regardless of their position in the program. And that spoke to me because I'm universal. I like to treat everyone the same. Now, if I got love with you, I'm going to give you a little more love, meaning that if you go to Penn State, I'm going to bring every tool out of my toolbox to make sure that you can manifest your dream, right? And I like people who work hard. I like people who are consistent. I like people who, I resonate with people who have a similar value system. So what set them apart is they were as fixated and as ambitious as I have always been about every phase of their life. Like, you go in a room and I'm talking to these guys and I'm like, you're 21 and you own your own house. You're an entrepreneur. You wrestle at Penn State. Yeah, you're required to go to school. You're an entrepreneur and you own your own home at 21. Is there any college, any other program where this is happening? And this is standard operating procedure. Guys are owning their own homes at a very young age. And a lot of the guys were married at like 22, 23, 24 years old. And I said, okay, man, these guys got all of their acts together at 22, 23, 24 years old. That's unusual. I mean, it's very, very unusual. And there's got to be a reason why that's happening. And so people always ask me, well, what's the secret sauce at Penn State? And I say, well, I mean, you're not going to like my answer, but it's a God first program. People value their relationship with spirit, however you want to talk about it, right? You can talk about oneness or source or God or divine, universal, supreme, prime creator, the creator of all that is, whatever your language is. For me, it's the same. When that's first, everything else lines up with ease. And that's what I noticed here.
Interesting.
And that's why I come back. You know, look, it's if I'm going to be here at the right time to work on these guys, I got to get up literally at 3:30 in the morning. Okay. So it's a devotion to come here. And then by the time I get back, my circadian rhythms are off. I'm going to miss some sleep, but it's worth it to me to be surrounded by people who are focused on all the right things. Like, look, you're lucky in life if you're financially intelligent. You're lucky in life if you're analytically intelligent. You're really lucky in life if you're spiritually intelligent. But to come into a place where the guys are also emotionally intelligent and they care about each other, that's, for me, that's gold. That's heaven. That's diamonds.
Interesting.
Interesting. What do you mean interesting?
Yeah, something that because it's well, like how you're talking is very similar to how this is the first time we've met, but they express a lot of your values that they have as well. And one thing that you keep touching on is almost the idea of brotherhood.
Yeah.
And can you just explain how important that is for the younger, like young men and young women and people between the ages of 18 and 25, but also everyone, how important that is to find like-minded individuals to grow with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little more important to me because I was orphaned at 7 years old. And when you lose a parent, right? And I really never knew my dad. But when you lose your mom, and moms provide something that no one else in the world can provide for you. And my mom was complicated, right? She had borderline personality disorder. So she was Tinkerbell, and then in 2.2 seconds, she was Godzilla, right? And then 3 seconds later, she was Tinkerbell. And so when she was gone, the people who were surrounded around me, they became my family. And, when I went into foster care, I walked in the door and Butchie was sitting cross-legged facing the wall. And he was just smashing his head into the wall like every 9 seconds. And I looked at him and then I looked up, towards heaven. I was like, what have you gotten me into? But those people, they treated me with kindness. And very soon, those guys, Kurt, Dave, Butch, Samantha, they became my family. And then 7 months later, my grandmother, she got custody of me. And then she sent me to Milton Hershey School in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And there was 15 other boys in the student home. So they became my family, right? And then when I would go home to visit my grandmother like 80 days a year, all my friends' moms, they became my mom. And then their sons became my brothers. And so brotherhood for me is huge. And it made me more universal. And my feeling is, look, sometimes you're born into a family and it's very difficult at an emotional level. There's a lot of trauma in the world. There's a lot of, you look at Americans, you got to understand, we're peasant stock, right? And peasant stock, they had to deal with a lot of survival-based strategies. And so from a mental aspect, I can see why we have these behaviors. But when you're a child, you don't understand history, right? All you know is like, I've been abandoned. I'm not getting the love. I'm not getting the support. I'm not getting the affection that I need. And so in boarding school, I was fortunate to learn how to joke around, to learn how to relate with others, to learn how to communicate at a brotherhood level. Men are vastly different than women, right? I have a lot of female friends, but, I made the mistake of, treating girls like boys until one of my friends who was a girl, pushed back and you can't talk to women that way. And so brotherhood is a safe space for me. We can joke around, we can bounce ideas off of each other. And men, when they sit together, we can give space for the other man to have the mic, But women, when they sit together, everyone has a mic and everyone's talking at the same time. So I don't know how to get into that conversation. There's no way for me to keep up. So I'm like, there must be something that I can do in the kitchen. I think I'll take out the trash. Oh, but just come in and talk with us more. Yeah, okay. I'm just gonna get dominated.
Right.
So with guys, you know, I just love to chill. You know, there's just, I work like all day long, right? And you know, I'm an introvert by nature. So boarding school was tough for me, right? There was a place where like I hated boarding school. But it's just because I was never getting enough time to process my feelings, my ideas, my experiences, my emotions. But now that I'm an introvert and I have all the space that I need to do that, when I get an opportunity to come back here and roll with the guys and joke around, and it's awesome. Like, it's the best thing in the world. Like, men need man time. And I'm not in a men's group in Los Angeles. And, you know, part of my motivation to move back up towards State College is to be with this guy and to be with this guy, right? So we can laugh, we can joke, we can create ideas, we can figure out better ways to serve. You know, because men love to serve. Men love to use their energy to make people feel safe, right? To make them feel comfortable. And I want to be able to create a great environment where people can come in and they can feel good and they can learn and they can grow. So Brotherhood for me is a safe space emotionally where I can serve more powerfully.
That brotherhood aspect that you value so much, that next step from Milton Hershey School to the Navy SEALs.
Oh, yeah, I left them out.
Yeah. Yeah. So was that what attracted you towards that next step? Was that strong brotherhood? And what was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, what's really funny, at Milton Hershey, there's 16 kids in the there's 16 boys in the student home. In the SEAL team platoon, there's 16 guys.
Wow.
Right? And in the student home, there's 4 officers. Okay? In in the SEAL teams, and the SEAL team platoon, there's 4 officers. Right?
Do you think they modeled it after that, or one after the
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that happened, but whatever it is, God definitely set it up for me. Mm-hmm. So it was super easy to relate. So when I moved into the SEAL teams, that brotherhood is a little bit different in the sense that there's no mistakes, right? Like, they don't tolerate mistakes, right? And they don't tolerate things being too loose. Like, you got to be on time. You got to be able to handle your own department. And you got to have your act together. Like, they say a little bit differently. They say, look, you got to have your shit together, right? And they're very direct. Like, I remember my first platoon meeting with my LPO. I walked in. He said, my name's Fred Kraft. I'm your LPO. You're a new guy. Well, he said, you're an FNG, right? I was like, FNG, what does that mean? He's like, he could see I was confused. He was like, you're a new guy, and I better never hear your mouth. I was like, okay. I'm not allowed to speak. And what he meant is like, you're here to learn, right? You're here to learn how to be a SEAL team guy. Your ideas that you have, no one cares about them. Your opinions, you don't have any experience. But you need to be quiet. You need to sit down. You need to learn. You need to shut up. I was like, all right. So that brotherhood was a little bit different than Milton Hershey, because Milton Hershey was like, let's joke around. Let's play around. Let's figure out how we could skip our chores. When the SEAL team, you better not be skipping your chores, because at the time they had a thing called hazing, right? And they just tell you, like, look, if you don't get your act together, you don't get your shit done, we're going to take you on the other side of the berm, and we're going to bring the heat. And you're like, okay, I get it. There's no room for screwing around. Now, when work is over and we're having a couple beers, we're going to get wild. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there was like 2 faces in that experience. And you either, like, once you enter into that club, like, you're moving along with that club. And if you're not, you're kind of an outsider.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's it was difficult for me to transition back into the civil community, because in the SEAL teams, you take work very seriously, right? Now you're joking around and talking trash the whole time, but your work is very sacred. And then when you move out into the real world, what happens is you see people slacking and you're like, this guy's a dirtbag, right? And then it came with criticism, it came with judgment, it came with disapproval. And then at some point I had to like dial back from that and realize that, okay, these people, they've never been through SEAL training, never been in the SEAL teams, because in that environment, it's life or death. I make a mistake and we're all in the SEAL teams, you die. You understand? Like, your life is on the line. So you have to take things more seriously.
Right.
But the brotherhood aspect is still there, but it has two faces. It's like we are ferocious on this side of the ledger, and then we're a wild child on this side. And if you got 4 hours of sleep, and you got to get back on the other side of the ledger really quickly. And as, you know, as a new guy, that was intimidating for me. Plus, in the SEAL teams, there's not a lot of minorities. Like, you know, it's all white guys, right? And so, you know, and they have a lot of black jokes, right? So if you're new and you're fresh into that scene, you know, your skin has to be thick. Like, you can't take things personal. And they're always poking in to, like, see where's your weak point. So I thought to myself, you know, the only way these guys are going to respect me is if I'm a better operator than them. And so I made sure I was a better shot than anybody in my platoon. I made sure I was a better swimmer, better diver, better combat diver, better runner. I made sure I was at the top at everything that we did. So they could never say, well, you know, Maher, you know, he's a good guy, but I never wanted to give them that space. So I knew as long as they respected how I operated, they could look past the color of my skin. And they could respect the way that I developed myself.
Can you talk a little bit about, it kind of got brought up, you know, just at the end of that, as far as like judging other people, either by things that they have no control over, or earlier you brought up, you know, coming from the Navy SEALs, diving back into the real world, you see somebody who doesn't take their work seriously, who you can think of as a slacker or think of as lazy. Can you just maybe speak to your thoughts on that, as far as, you know, your view, not your view specifically, but people viewing other people, and kind of how you see maybe comparison and judgment?
Yeah, okay. So I was up at Western University. This is when I was training for the Olympic trials. I was up at Western University, and I was joking around all the time, right? And I lived with one of the girls that went to Mesa College, which was the first school that I ran track and field at. And after about 2 months, you know, her and the girls from her cross country team piled into an apartment that we were sharing. And she was like, to two of my buddies, she was like, you're an ass. You're an ass. And she pointed to me and she was like, but you're an asshole. I've never seen anyone be able to take, you know, this criticism and this humor to the level that you take it. And like, she went on for like 2 hours. She just like, she was just lashing me. And I thought, you know what? I need to sit here and I need to listen to this. And I realized at that point that I had judgments or criticisms or disapprovals from people, but the way that I would deal with it was through humor. And I didn't realize I was hurting her feelings or hurting her teammates' feelings. And she blasted on me for literally 120 minutes. So much so that when I woke up in the morning, my two roommates, they were packing the car to drive back to San Diego.
Wow.
And they said, how come you didn't pack your stuff? And I said, I'm not going anywhere. They said, why aren't you going anywhere? I said, I'm going to sit in this. And I stayed another month and I sat in it. And I realized that what I was doing is I was disapproving of people. So the way that they talked, or the way that they walked, or just anything that I could point out. And then I said, okay, I need to put this down. And then God just said to me, look, Christopher, I don't need you competing with me. I said, ooh. Okay, I guess I'll shut up. And then I took that a little further because I had a long bus ride from Western University back down to San Diego. And when you have time to sit on the bus, you don't know anyone. I'm just looking out the window. I was just reflecting and reflecting and reflecting and reflecting. And I sort of made a deal with myself that I wouldn't hide my criticism under humor anymore. And then I just became like the quiet guy in the room that just observed. And anytime I had a thought where I was disapproving of someone, I would just reformat that idea. And I would swallow it and go, is that totally true? Is that all that they are? And I'd go, no. They're a child of God, and God is working with them in his way, and I need to get out of his way. Because my competing with him is only creating a divide in this potentiality of this relationship. And so I can lead more by shutting my mouth. And so I was no longer the funny guy in the room. I was like the quiet, peaceful guy, the guy that was reserved. And that created more space for people to be themselves, and people trusted me more. And then they started to come to me, talk to me about things that were intimate, where they were failing. And then I could give them good guidance based off of my own inner deficiencies, my own insecurities, my own fears, my own limiting beliefs. And so that changed for me. And so, you know, if you're listening, if you're tuning in, anytime you have a criticism or a judgment or disapproval or an overly moralizing position you're taking over someone else, what you're really saying is, I couldn't love myself if I looked that way. I couldn't love myself if I dressed that way. I couldn't love myself if I behaved that way. Well, that might be true. But what you have to ask yourself is, if I'm here on earth to love unconditionally, why am I not letting God love me that way? Because everything that God does is perfect. And so when I judge you, I'm judging God's creation, which means that I'm saying I know better than God. And then I'm being arrogant. And then when you're spiritually arrogant, you become self-righteous. And when you're self-righteous, no one can get into your heart. So it's a very successful protective strategy to, well, the way I used it is I kept people from giving me love. And I turned it into, I was the one that was allowed to give love, but nobody could give me love. And really what it was all about is I didn't trust anyone. You know, all the things that I went through as a child, I need to get that sorted out. I need to change that. And then once I got some help, you know, then I shifted that all around. And now I see you in me. I see me in you. And now we're all on the same level. So, and these guys will tell you, I never put myself above them. We're all on the same level. And that's why Penn State is important. That's why the way that Kale operates is really good for me, because he treats everybody the same. And these guys treat everybody the same. I want to treat everybody the same and be more universal in my ability to receive love, but my ability to give love too.
It's great stuff.
Yeah, it's big. Thank you for sharing all that. First off, that's pretty amazing. Now, can you talk about how you found help for yourself?
Yeah, well, you know, look, just if you're a listener, you gotta understand, I'm not this great guy that woke up one morning. It's like, I want to help the world to be a better person. I I wanted to help myself.
Right.
Right. I was being selfish. I was self-focused. I wanted to get to the Olympic trials and let other people see that I had value. And I was looking for external validation. And, you know, God's smart. You know, he knew that my soul, my spirit is strong, stubborn, and ambitious. And so he said, okay, well, if you're going to be that, I got to figure out how to break you down. Like, I got to get you to bend the knee. I got to get you to surrender. How am I going to get that to happen? And I ended up with pain in my body. And when you're going through SEAL training, there's this concept. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. So if you're in pain, but you can deal with the pain, well, just keep moving forward. Don't let that pain stop you. Just keep driving ahead. And I took that literally, which is probably naive of me. And I got out of the SEAL teams and went into training for sports. And it's impossible to apply a SEAL team mindset to being a sophisticated athlete. And so I went hard all day, every day at everything I did. So my teammates, you know, if we were doing quarter mile sprints for the day, they were given 90%. I didn't know they were given 90%. I thought they were given 100%. And when you give 100% at practice every single moment of every day, well, when it's time to perform, there's nothing left in the tank. And so I ended up with pain, all these overuse injuries, more pain. And then it started with plantar fasciitis, and then it ended up being runner's knee, then iliotibial band friction syndrome. And then I had carpal tunnel, but I had compartment syndrome in my calf. And then I ended up with a ruptured bursa in my hip. And then I ended up with low back pain, then frozen shoulder syndrome. Like, you know, everything was traumatic. But I still kept showing up at practice, pretending that everything was okay. And so that pain finally got me to reach out for help after I was in a car accident. I was sitting at a stoplight, and this guy came and T-boned me coming down a hill in Ocean Beach, California, and blasted into my car at about 45 miles an hour. And then I went straight to the hospital. And then after that, I could never get away from the structural pain. And then their option for me was a hip replacement. And I'm thinking, a hip replacement? And the guy said, okay, look, you need to go, you know, there's a video you can watch to see how they do the surgery. And they bring out a and through the bone. I said, no, no, please, no. He said, there is another way. And I woke up one morning and called a buddy of mine in the SEAL team. His name was Jeff Higgs. And Jeff came over, and he brought a yoga mat and a juicer. And he said, oh, I'm going to bring a yoga mat and a juicer. I thought, what's a yoga mat? This is in San Diego, California. This is, you know, late 90s. I don't know what a yoga mat is. Like, this is how ignorant I am. Okay. I'm thinking I'm doing the best training in the world, and I don't know what a yoga mat is. And he's bringing over a juicer. And he makes his juice, right? And for me, it was terrible. It's carrot, parsley, beets, lemon, and maybe a little bit of apple and celery. And he sucked his down in like 2 minutes. It took me almost, 30, 45, maybe an hour to finish mine. I was sipping. I was like, and in that moment, I realized an epiphany. I had it. I was like, oh, he's fit and he's healthy. And I'm fit and I'm toxic. And then I was like, okay, I got it. And then we went in the room, and he started doing all these stretches, getting all these positions. And I was like, he was like, okay, now cross your arms over each other, wrap your hands. And I thought, that's as far as I go. Oh. That was it. That as far as I went. And I thought, I'm straining. Nope. Every position he got in, there was no way. There was no way for me to get pissed. And he was just laughing at me. Right? It's just like, you know, because I look like Adonis, right? If you took off my shirt and I was just in some little tidy whities walking down the beach, right? You're like, wow, right? But underneath the hood, I was a complete mess, toxic and full of pain, tense and stressed. And I could relate with people. I was charming. I was a Gemini, right? So I could get you to buy into whatever. But underneath was a false narrative. But I didn't know. Nobody told me. Nobody told me if you experience abuse as an infant, as a child, your nervous system goes into fight or flight. Nobody, that was not part of my education. At the time, nobody knew that, right? So when I got into this, nobody knew this information, all right? The best that was available is you could have some talk therapy, right? And, you know, that wasn't interesting to me because I needed something bigger. And so I kept asking for more help and more help and more help. And then I got into Feldenkrais. I got into the Gasku method. I got into Rolfing. I got into, what's it called? There's this other method where they like dig in their elbows and their forearms into all of your connective tissue. And that was like torture, right? And that's when I really learned to breathe, because he got in there and I was just like, it was just an hour of like managing all my emotions and all my pain with my breath. And then I started to understand the value of breath. And then this guy, Stephen Bolger, he really helped me a lot. And then I realized on the ride home after the first session, because he said to me, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm an athlete." And he lifted up the sheet to fill out. And he said, "Look at this. What does it say at the top?" And I said, "Christopher Lee Maher." He said, "You might want to think about that." Mm-hmm. And then I was like, ooh, I didn't really come here for psychobabble. Like, could you shut up and just get to work? Like, I need to get to the Olympic trials. I need to prove that I have value. And on the ride home, it was impossible to stop thinking about that conversation, what he said to me. And then I realized, all my Christmas gifts, all my birthday gifts that I received were all around me being an athlete. And suddenly my identity of who I was an athlete. And so I said, I think I need to figure out how I can separate these two. And then I went over to my friend's house. His name's Aaron Reed. He and I ran track together. And his parents had a couch in their guest living room. And I put my feet under the couch and I spread my knees wide. And I let my pelvis fall forward. It took my pelvis the first time about 45 minutes to be able to reach the ground. And you remember the first time I did that to you, right? You remember the first time I did that to you. That's like, yeah. It took me 45 minutes. And while that was happening, I could feel all of these like sub-based personalities or images that you develop in order to survive your circumstances. I could feel all that stuff leaving me. And before that, if someone ever met me, they would always say to me, "Man, dude, you're like the most intense person I've ever met."
Really?
And then I went to the grocery store. This woman came up to me. She was like, "Wow, you're so peaceful." And I was like, "What's going on?" Like, strangers are coming up to me, giving me unsolicited feedback. Before I walk into a grocery store, everyone steps out of my way because my energy's so intense. I'm just pulsing. I'm driven. And I remember linebackers in the NFL that would just like, I'd be moving through the airport and they would just step out of the way. And I didn't know why. And now suddenly people were gravitating towards me. And all I did was remove tension and stress out of my body. And I kept asking for the next person. So I'd go to another session. I get done the session, "Do you know anybody else who can help me?" And they'd give me another number of somebody. I'd call them. And then I was just focused on getting well. But I was focused on getting well out of structural pain, but I didn't know that there was a psychological, emotional component. And I don't think anybody else did at the time. And then I started to put this map together. And then I met this guy who was working with Dara Torres. And at 30 plus years old, I think at 37, she went to the Olympics and won 5 medals. Like 37-year-old women are just lucky to get in the pool, right? They don't win 5 medals at the Olympics. And she did this in Sydney. I got a hold of this guy. And I went up there and I worked with him. And then he already had a map laid out. And then I got into traditional Chinese medicine, and then all these things started to blend together, and I started building systems. And then I started enrolling my friends to be able to work on me. And then I built this community down in San Diego with 4 or 5 of the guys that were in that brotherhood. And that brotherhood was all about healing and personal growth. And we got after it for 7 years every day. And so my brotherhoods changed, but the element was always the same. It was always about loving care towards the other person and growth. In the SEAL teams, yes, the growth was harsh, right? But it was still about growth. Like you understood that, oh, this is what's required to be a man. You show up on time, you honor your word, you follow through, and you complete on the task, and you stay quiet and you observe quietly what needs to be done, right? And in Milton Hershey, the brotherhood was about figuring out, how do I beat this system? How do I learn to play this game? Because, you know, Milton Hershey was based on the merit system. If you did good, you got more privileges. If you did bad, you got less privileges. And, you know, I was a slow learner. And so I thought I had things to say. And, you know, I spoke back to teachers. I spoke back to house parents. And, you know, they gave me more and more punishments. And before I knew it, it was like for 30 days, you've got extra chores and you've got no phone privileges. You can't go to rec. You can't go in the pool. You can't lift weights. You can't shoot pool. You can't play ping pong. You can't go out and play baseball with the guys. And then eventually, you know, my girlfriend said to me, like, aren't you just tired of all this? Like, I don't get to see you because you're always around and never being punished. And finally I thought, okay, I want to be with her more than I want to run my mouth. And I eventually learned to shift, but it was a slow process because I was stubborn and I didn't trust people. I didn't trust those people were serving me and had my best interest. And they always did. But my heart was, you know, it was severely protected. And it took me a while. I was there for 8 years before I finally understood that this institution was on my side.
How can you tell when people are worthy of trust or on your side, or who to let in and who to basically
Keep at a distance.
keep at a distance? Yeah.
I mean, for me now, it's the vibe the person has, you know. I didn't have that energetic awareness then. I think people show themselves really quickly. And it's easy for me to, because of my training, I can easily look at someone's posture, right? I know if they're closed off. I know if they're open. And it's this internal assessment that happens. And there's a guttural feeling that I also have. And then I investigate. I start asking questions. And I'm usually the one who's in the position to give help versus being in the position to receive help. But for me, I think mostly it's a guttural response. Like if I meet you and I'm going to let you in, there's something about you that gets triggered inside of me and I get excited inside. If I don't have those feelings inside, I probably don't tune into you. Now, if you need help, I always tune into people that need help. But I'm talking about people who come in and help me, right? as I go over this, it's definitely a feeling. It's a feeling. And at Penn State, it's with all the guys, it's always the same feeling.
Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy of what's in your body is in your life?
Yeah, for sure. So that's easy. For anyone listening, if you have an aspect of your life where you're frustrated or agitated or irritated or you're missing the boat, right? You're ramming your head into the same wall, or you end up back at the same place again and again and again, it's because there's a place in your body where you're holding too much tension and stress, and in that place, you're never receptive, right? If I have a wall up, I have a steel wall up, it's impossible for me to be receptive in that place. And so let's say we want to give a contextual example, right? Let's say you have a husband, and his name's Butch, and you're telling Butch, hey, listen, I feel like it's important that you sit down and you talk with the kids more. And Butch is like, look, Betty, like I work all day long, honey. I got 3 jobs. I come home. She's like, well, you sit in a chair and you fall asleep. And he's like, I don't think you're getting it. And he tells her again and 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 again. And she's frustrated now, and now she wants to get a divorce. And she thinks that he's the problem. And what she doesn't understand is that she's the issue. And it's that she lacks the ability to be in reality and understand that because he works all the time and she has all these desires for all these things that she wants, and he wants her to have what she wants, that's going to require him to give more time and energy in the outside of the home. She's outside of reality. She lives in fantasy. She thinks she can just drain him, and then he can come home and it can be everything she wants him to be there too. And so she lives in fantasy. And so as long as someone's living in fantasy, they can never be in reality. And so there's something inside of her that's causing her to live in fantasy. And we got to figure that out. Like if she comes to see me, I got to figure out, like, what is this? Like, oh, Bob works 14 hours a day and you're bothered that he doesn't have enough time for this. Like, are you serious? Like, we need to figure out where this comes from.
Right.
And so there's something in her body that's not allowing her to be vested in reality. And then she's living in this fantasy. And the question for me then at that point is, how do I get him out of the fantasy? Or another example, you've got this kid that's wrestling at Lehigh University, and he shows up to practice. He's late every day, right? And then he wonders why the coaches aren't putting extra attention into him. And then he starts judging the coaches and then starts judging his teammates. Well, there must be something inside of you that's keeping you from showing up to practice on time. And, I mean, he gives the lip service. He said, look, wrestling's the most important thing to me, but you're 30 minutes late every day. Well, there must be something going on inside of you that's causing that behavior. Well, you can either look at the behavior or you can find where you have pain in your body, because the pain in your body is always telling you where you have a limiting belief, where you have an inner deficiency, where you have an insecurity, and where you have a fear, because you cannot get pain without fear. And if you want more pleasure in your life, you have to be willing to let go of pain. It's impossible to have more pleasure in your life, more satisfaction, more peace in your life without letting go of pain. Whether it's emotional pain, whether it's psychological pain, whether it's structural pain, whether it's energetic pain. Energetic pain, what's energetic pain? Exhaustion, that's energetic pain. Tiredness, that's energetic pain. Insufficient sleep, waking up with your eyes super, super heavy, that's energetic pain. So how do I remove the pain from my life and maximize my potential? you got to look at your pain. Don't look at your pleasure. Look at your pain. So if you're a wrestler, you're a football player, you're in the UFC, you're in MMA, and you've got this stiff neck, well, I can tell you what's going on. If you got a stiff neck, it means your adductors are too short and your abductors are too short, right? If you got a stiff back, your iliacus is too short. Psoas major, psoas minor is too short. Your gluteus is too short, right? So wherever you have pain, those are indicators of where you have inner deficiencies, where you have limiting beliefs, where you live in fantasy. And I think it's always more important to be vested in your pain than it is to be vested in your pleasure. Because the places where you're turned on, who cares? You're already turned on there. Like, we don't need to, that light doesn't need to get any brighter. It already works. But what about where the places that aren't working? Let's look at those. Like, assess yourself. Go to practice. See where you're stiff. Get rid of that stiffness. Because wherever you're stiff in your body, you're stiff in your mind. Wherever you're stiff in your body, you're stiff in your heart. Wherever you're stiff in your body, you're stiff in your emotions. And I want young men, right, to be open in their heart. I want them to be comfortable in their bodies. I want their minds to be clear and quiet. I want their emotions to be grounded. I want their energy to be abundant, because if they have that, success is guaranteed. You're going to be a good dad. You're going to be a good husband. You're going to be a good teammate. You're going to be a great coworker. You're going to be a great boss. But if you have pain in all these other places, you're never going to be those things. And look, God gave us all these gifts. All of he laid all of it inside of you. Everything he gave to Jesus, he gave to you. Everything he gave to Jesus, he gave to you. But are you going to devote the time and energy that Jesus did to develop himself? See, they never talk about that. What was he doing to develop himself? Aha. You don't know what he was doing. Okay, but I can promise you he wasn't getting stiff. All right? There's no way any human could be flogged the way that he was and then carry that cross up that hill if he didn't develop himself, developed his mind, developed his emotions, developed his heart, developed his body. See, they never talk about that. It's easy to listen to scripture. That's great. The words are wonderful. But you need to be able to take heartfelt action. To do what? To remove the pain. See, he came into a human body to feel the pain that humans deal with. And then he transcended it, the click of his fingers. Now, you live in a time where regardless of who you are, where you're born, you can transcend that pain. Because what did he say? He said, look, you can do things greater than I. Because he laid down all of the information you needed. But now you need to know the training, right? He didn't give you the training manual, right? Fortunate for me, God bestowed upon me a training manual to be able to remove the pain from your ancestors, from your history, so you can be successful. Everybody wants to win. Winning feels good. But when you lose, that changes your life. That changes your life. That changes your perspective. You figure out, who am I when you lose, right? It's easy to win. It's difficult to lose. How do I turn these losses into pluses? I got to remove the pain. It hurts when you lose. I was an athlete. It hurt, right? I mean, I came out of SEAL teams. I was focused. Like, for the first time, I played around in high school. I joked around, right? I took my athletic gifts for granted. And then once I got out of SEAL teams, I was driven, but I was driven from the wrong reason. And I never looked at my pain. And so I had to turn those losses into wins, and I have. And now I help other people who are athletes that want to succeed at the highest level to become the best version of themselves. And they do. Every day they do. But what I care about most, the wrestling's important, the fighting's important. What I care about most is that they love themselves. and they repair their relationship with their parents so that they can become good dads, good husbands, good leaders.
So for the viewers watching, you recommend to start off with the physical, to start clearing some of that pain, clearing some of that energy of a lifetime accumulation of stress. And then from there, in the book, obviously, we highly recommend the book. Goes through your stretches, some of the physical ways, practical ways to start removing that stress, and then some of the mental, energetic, and spiritual ways to do that following. But you recommend to start with that physical.
Yeah, I mean, look, humans have varying levels of density, right? And so when you look at the auric field all the way down to the physical body, every human has 13 layers of self, right? And that 13th layer is where they're communicating directly with God. So when your body is super, super dense, that communication that you're having with God is less clear, right? And now he's saying, hey, I think it'd be a good idea if you drank some more water, and then it comes through your density and your trauma, and you're here, I think it's a good idea if I go to the pub and I have some more beer. Yeah. And so if you want to have a powerful relationship with Source, you got to remove the density. And so I agree, yeah, you got to start with the body, but I would say the very first step is to access humility. And look, God doesn't care if you get on your knees or you're standing up or you're sitting in a chair, but tune in and say, look, can you come into my heart and guide me? Can you lead me to the people that will help me? I'm ready. I'm ready to get down. I'm ready to shine my light as bright as it can shine. If you're willing to hand over that power and invite that love inside of you, you're going to be unstoppable. And then you're going to move through the density because, look, it's easy to put tension in. Any monkey can do that. It's super, super easy to get buff and put tension in. It's very difficult and it's painful to remove that tension. You remember the first time I worked on you, right? Like it's
walking
like,
on each other's calves.
Oh yeah, like it's no joke. But once you get on the other side of that, right?
Yeah,
you're free.
Yeah, and what's crazy is you get so adapted to that unhealthy lifestyle that you don't even know what you're supposed to be feeling like.
No.
Right? And then when you start removing it and everything just starts opening up, you start feeling lighter. Physically, you feel better. I mean, I haven't had an injury since we started working together in 3 years. And before that, it was surgery after surgery after surgery. So,
can you say that again for the listener?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I had 4 shoulder surgeries over the course of 5 years. And then by the grace of God, we started working together. You started to help me remove some of the physical tension in my body.
Some of it.
Initially.
Yeah, okay.
And helping me with, the relationship with my parents, how I chose to incorporate more intention into my body because of those relationships, other relationships that may have caused more tension, and started out with stretches that translated into more mental work, more spiritual work. And over the course of 3 years, I've been able to remove more and more tension. My shoulder has never felt better. I haven't had any major injuries since. Got married, which was wasn't looking too good for a little while. And
to the love of your life.
Yeah, exactly. My relationship with my parents are great. Not that it was negative, but I was able to appreciate them and have empathy for their childhood and the generation before that, and how we judge previous generations as to what we would have done better when we don't know what they went through. And so all of that combines, and a lot more that we can't get into in our podcast. But so I can't thank you enough for helping me and remove all that. And now I can trust my body and feel like I'm my true authentic self. And that's part of, not to get into, it's not my podcast, but that's part of why I'm not fighting currently, is I don't feel the need to prove anything anymore.
That's right.
And, through high school and college, I felt like I had to do something to get recognition and to stand out. And now, primarily to the work that we've done together and then leading to my own spiritual work is, thankfully I'm more at peace and I love myself. And so now it's just, what do I want to do because I want to do it, and what will serve others the most, instead of what can get me to stand out and have others say, oh, he did this and he's an athlete and he accomplished this, therefore he deserves, love and recognition. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome, man. It's always a pleasure. You God first, right? And I learned that very quickly. And your family's God first. And so when that's in alignment, it's easy for everything else to get in alignment. You have a motivation to move through the discomfort, to bring more pleasure into your life. You're the same, right? Your family's the same. And it's like the initial questions that Ronan asked. It always comes back to that. Like this community up here. And look, everyone doesn't, it's not like you go to Penn State or the Nickal Wrestling Club and everyone's going to the same church and they're singing Kumbaya together. No, that's not what's happening. Everybody has their own relationship, but everybody respects everybody else's relationship.
For sure.
Right? With Creator. But the respect for Creator is there.
For sure. Well, it was interesting to me because that was one of the first things I learned about Anthony, was how devout he was in his faith. And we rarely go to the same church, like on holiday, but there was probably over 5 years, 6, 7 years maybe, where we never went to church together, but we had that connection.
Yeah.
And definitely the same way with a lot of the other guys in the community on the team. Like, we're all kind of on our own path in that way, but I think the path is aligned in a way as well.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's always the same. I care less what your faith is. What I love is when you have faith, right? And if that faith causes you to become more loving, more kind, more compassionate, more understanding, more forgiving, more open, more generous, that's good stuff. Okay? But that's your stuff. I'm never here to tell someone or guide someone in how they needed to be guided spiritually, because I'm a science guy, right? I'm a God guy, but I'm also a science guy. And so I'm looking for verifiable, repeatable results that I know are going to make this person feel better. And I know that when they feel good, they do good. And I know when people feel bad, they do bad. And if I can interrupt that pattern of feeling bad, they're going to start feeling good. And everyone's going to benefit. The clerk at the bank is going to benefit, right? Because they're going to come in smiling and happy. And, this is how this world gets better. This is how this world grows. Look, everyone listening, sees the news feed. We see what's going on, right? And I'm here to say, forget about all that. If you focus in on developing your body and develop your emotions and develop your mind and develop your spirit, that's going to be irrelevant, because eventually our light collectively is going to be so bright, the darkness is just going to disappear because it will have no place here. And so when someone reaches me, I want to reach another person in whatever way they reached me that I consider to be beneficial.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Chris. I think this is going to be a good foundation for people to start learning about how they can become their true, authentic selves again. And like I said, Free for Life is the book. It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. Don't go to Amazon. I'm going to tell you why you don't go to Amazon. Amazon robs from authors. So a book costs $24. They're going to give me $3.
Got it.
He's taking 90%.
That's great.
Okay. my book is on my website, truebodyintelligence.com. Please purchase the book there, okay? Because I then take those resources and I use them to help other people, right? I don't, Jeff Bezos uses his resources to buy another yacht. He never invited me on. If he invited me on, I would suggest you buy the book from Amazon, but he never gave me an invite. So please go to True Body Intelligence. And the book is an audio. And when you hear my voice, when you hear me speak the book to you, there's going to be an energetic transmission that's going to reach you and touch you and hit you in a completely different way. So I would go there. And if I give a download, every other day. So if you go to Instagram, Christopher Lee Maher, Maher, I'm always dropping some knowledge and some wisdom there. And tune in, because I'm going to be teaching there for the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, I've made a commitment to do that. I'm always podcasting. I created my own podcast, awesome. Right?
Nice.
Which I would love to have you guys on.
For sure.
Right? And, so we can get into some stuff. It's going to be called the True Body Intelligence Podcast. You're the first to know that that's going to be in existence. I already filmed the first 24 episodes.
Awesome.
So I'm very excited about that. And I think when you get into your 50s, I'm heading towards 60. So I'm on the other side of 55 now. You want to share. Like you've had all the success that you wanted personally, financially and all those things. But then you want to create all these other avenues where you can just get the information out to people. So you can look me up, just punch my name in, Christopher Lee Maher, U.S. Navy SEAL, and you're going to find something there. I'm always giving. I'm into it. I want to help people. We're all transpersonal, so we're into service of others, and I'm happy to be here. I'm glad to vibe with you guys. This is probably the best conversation, because the wheels are off. We can talk about the things that I want to talk about, right? And we can share the things that we believe is important ultimately for everyone. Like, I want people to be happy. I want people to have money. I want people to educate. I want everyone to have a nice house. And that for me is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're very grateful that you'd spend some time with us, and grateful that we could, have a platform to push positivity and your message and help people. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Brotherhood is where it's at. If you're a woman, sisterhood. We're not leaving out the ladies.
Never.
Okay.
Love it.
We're inclusive.
All right.
Love
See
you
you, everybody.
Peace.
Yeah.
See ya. Peace.